The Seattle Mariners are flying home from Boston after losing 2 of 3 to the Boston Red Sox. Has big implications for the third wildcard spot. Joe and I are going to talk about that live and in person, by the way. And then we're going to talk about the MLB trade deadline, our grades for the Seattle Mariners at the MLB trade deadline. Did they do enough for the rest of the season? You guys aren't going to like what we have to say. And then we're going to talk about the Philadelphia Phillies series coming up when the Mariners return back home this coming weekend. Thank you guys so much for watching episode 109 of the Hit It Here podcast, part of the Bleav Network, the Justin Turner episode of the Hit It Here podcast. And I am here with Joe. Actually, here with Joe. Joe.
I'm right here.
How are you?
I am not great. I'm pretty okay. The final game against the Red Sox, the Mariners had opportunities. It just, it doesn't go the way you need it to. Of course, they do finish the road trip 4-2. Mm-hmm. Coming off of a 1-5 homestand. You would have liked to even it out, go 1-5 and then 5-1, but beggars can't be choosers. Mitch Garver had an awful day in the third game. It is what it is, okay? You go 4-2 in the road trip, you sweep the White Sox like you do. Losing the series to Boston in Boston, is it super unexpected? Not really. But the way it's shaping up, you're saying the wild card 3 implications. Beginning of the season, I think we had Red Sox bottom of the AL East, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think a lot of people felt like the Red Sox would be as good as they have been this year. Those people that did, they placed a bet on them. They're probably looking pretty good as far as if there's playoffs, win-loss, plus-minus predictions, whatever. They did a bet on it. It's probably with BetOnline.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your #1 source for everything online sports betting. Right now, you could receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything, including the Olympics. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games or Olympic events are being played. When the game's over, though, you can head on over to the online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or even unwind with one of the over 150 slots games available. Head to the website today to get in on the action, and when you're there, use promo code Bleav, that's BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. BetOnline, the game starts here.
Colton, your ace showed that he was human in the first game against Boston.
Right.
He did not do as well as we all anticipated.
Right.
But it was on some BS. Some BS that did get us locked out of our Twitter account for 12 hours. Courtesy of you. Thank you so much. Okay. Logan Gilbert did not have his best stuff, but it was a strike 3 call that then was not called that. Should have been. And then the rest of the game implodes. The final scoreline here, 14. Whoa. To the Red Sox. Mariners do score 7 in this game. Exciting. I think Randy hit his first home run as a Mariner in this game, albeit in kind of garbage time situations here. Kicking off this series on such a bad foot when you have Logan Gilbert not do his best. Then you have to then go use your bullpen. It kind of set up the rest of this series. If things didn't go perfectly for the Mariners, I don't want to say as failure, but this is a recipe for disaster to start.
Yeah, when it comes to this game, Joe, I think that specifically because with the way the offense performed in this game and in the series versus the White Sox, it's a good sign, right? You're not gonna your pitching staff very seldom is gonna give up 14 runs.
Yeah,
you lost this game because of your pitching staff, plain and simple. That's not normally the case. It hasn't been the case all year, so. This one, I was like, okay, it happens once in a while. The Mariners offense still, again, put up 7 runs, albeit some of them were, like you said, garbage time runs where the Red Sox didn't really care. But, again, good game from Randy here, went 2 for 3. Cal Raleigh went 2 for 5 in this game as well with a home run. So, some good showings out of a few guys on this roster. Even Mitch Haniger had a hit in this one, Joe. Yeah.
The corpse of Mitch Haniger living on.
Mm-hmm. We saw Victor Robles go 0 for 4 in this game, which does have some implications, Joe, for Game 2. But overall, the guys that pitched in this game, Logan Gilbert only went 2 2/3, giving up 7 earned runs. Again, it was BS.
Yeah.
Nah. I full disclosure, I told Andy Fletcher, who was a home plate umpire, and the MLB Umpires Association, to step on a Lego. And Elon, over there on Twitter, didn't like that, so we were blocked out for 12 hours from tweeting. Coming up to the MLB trade deadline. You know what? That's on me. It's my bad, Joe. Going into Game 2. Let's talk about it.
Well, they had some roster moves because Game 2 is obviously the deadline day. Roster moves also happened on this day. So Jonathan Diaz and Justin Turner report to the team. Jonathan Diaz obviously getting called up from Tacoma. The corresponding moves are Gabe Spire, who pitched in that first game against Boston, went 1 1/3, and then Locklear moves down to Tacoma, giving Justin Turner the full reins to first base. He's batting fifth in this game. Playing first base, wearing number 2.
It's fourth. Luke Raley came in for Victor
That's
Robles.
right. That's right. Batting fourth. I don't know. Turner looks funky in the jersey. You keep yelling at me that I think he looks weird. I
think he looks weird no matter what. I don't think it's the jersey. I think that's just his face.
That's just his face. Well, we'll take it. Maybe it will grow on me. The second game here, Luis Castillo on the bump. Someone predicted, I think, during our big trade deadline stream. So, one, props to you guys for showing up and showing out for that. That was an amazing time. I shaved my beard during it. If you guys were there, you know. But someone, I think, in that stream at the beginning of it said that Castillo would give up a 3-run bomb early on in this game. That's exactly what he did to Devers. Devers just torturing the Mariners in this series. Goes 6 innings, 6 hits, 3 earned, 1 walk, 4 Ks. So it was only the home run that really mattered. And the Mariners offense did show up similar to how they did in the first game. In the second game, they dropped 10 against the Red Sox in this one, Colton.
Yeah, Luis Castillo ended up going 6 innings pitched still. 6 hits, 3 earned, 4 strikeouts, 1 walk. The other 3 runs came on Taylor Saucedo, giving up 3 runs in just 2/3 of an inning pitched. Saucedo has not looked good recently, Joe, in the past couple of games, at least the second and third game of this series. But you know who has looked good was Colin Snyder.
Absolutely.
He came in,
nails.
Gave up 2 hits after Sauce got pulled from the game, but alas, he was able to get out of that inning. In this game, we did see Victor Robles come out with a bit of a hip issue, whatever that may be. Luke Raley went into center field, which did have some implications for Game 3. But overall, in this game, another big game for Jorge Polanco. He's had quite a few of those recently. He also had to get pulled out of Game 3. A lot of injuries in this series specifically.
Just banged up.
Yeah, Dylan Moore 2 for 3 in this series.
Almost a grand slam.
Yeah, almost. You actually brought up to me before we watched the game today how good Demo is on the road, Joe. And yeah, that really continued here in Game 2.
Yeah, his OPS is almost double compared to what he's posting in T-Mobile. So if there's a pick to click at any point, if it's Dylan Moore on the road, it might be your pick. Same way with like how Bryce Miller pitches so much better at home. Dylan Moore just mashes on the road. We do see Moore obviously playing shortstop in Game 3 here. A bit more baseball scorey type game. We're not scoring touchdowns in this one like we were in Games 1 and 2, but a loss nonetheless, unfortunately. Mariners do lose this series. They lose this game 3-2. You got Brian Bayo on the bump opposite George Kirby. So Rojas leading off with Robles out. Rojas had a great game. Had a home run deep to center field off of Bayo. That was very, very exciting. But the big glaring hole is Mitch Garver's stinky 0 for 5 in this one. Had opportunities to drive in some runs. There was a big one with the bases loaded. First pitch swinging after Dylan Moore draws a walk late in this game. It's just not competitive. Not what you need. Kirby didn't have his greatest stuff. 5 1/3, 7 hits, 2 earned, 1 walk, 2 Ks. So with how the bullpen was kind of feeling going into this game, with how much guys have been used, you needed, I think, Kirby to go 6 here. Doesn't get you quite there. Voth does come in. Aside from, I'd say, the hiccup with Gregory Santos becoming just the most glass bones and paper skin baseball player.
Have you watched Brian Wu?
I mean, I guess Brian was probably up there too. It's just, you want to see Santos complete an outing clean, gets injured, like he gets 2 outs, and then Snyder has to come in. Keeping this game tied was so important. Just the Mariners offense didn't do enough like they did in the first 2 games to really keep this going. They're in the 10th. They don't score a run. Devers is up. It was written on the wall from the jump, I feel like.
The wall that he hit it off of.
Yes.
For them to win the game.
Stupid.
That was really funny.
Stupid 37-foot wall.
Yeah. A lot of people saying that they should have walked Devers there. I agree with that, but if Mitch Garver does his job once during this game, you probably don't even get to the 10th. So fact of the matter is the offense needs to be better in this game specifically, and specifically Mitch Garver, who was catching in this one. At this point, you know, he has more at-bats this season than he had all of last season, and it's clearly not working. So only playing once a week when Cal needs a day off, you cannot continuously give him at-bats with how he's playing right now. It's just been terrible. Should they have walked Rafael Devers? Maybe. But at the same time, who knows? Then the next guy might have just done it. So whatever. Like, it is what it is. In the end, Justin Turner's been a really nice addition to this team so far, Joe. He, in the first game, like first inning, I think it was, he blooped a little single to right field to score a run. And he's just, he has showed how professional of a hitter he is. And even that play at first base with Tyler O'Neill, Justin Turner had no business being where he was for that play.
He definitely leaned into it a little bit. But it's a play where he knows where he's at. He knows the rules. He's a veteran for a reason. I'm not surprised to see Justin Turner make a play like that. And for maybe a guy like Tyler O'Neill to not be fully aware of what's going on around him, for Turner to take advantage of that situation and get the Mariners out of a jam. Obviously, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they still lose the game, but that could have been a turning point. And it's, yeah, I agree. Justin Turner, he's looked every bit of a veteran presence that you needed to get at the deadline. Could it have been a little bit better as far as like the profile going into it? Maybe, but I've been, aside from how he looks in a Mariners jersey, pretty happy with how Justin Turner's played so far.
So let's talk a little bit about the deadline, Joe, because obviously that was, at the time of recording this, yesterday. The Mariners only made one move on deadline day, and that was getting JT Chargois back from the Marlins, right? He was with the Marlins. And all in all, they added Randy Arozarena, they added Justin Turner, JT Chargois, and they added
Jimmy Garcia.
Jimmy Garcia, thank you, my God. And so far, all of those guys have paid dividends except for Chargois, who has not been with the team yet. A lot of this is a very, I think, divisive. Is that a word? Divisive? That's what I'm looking for? Yeah. Deadline for the Mariners, because everyone had their heart set on one of Brent Rooker, Luis Robert, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., maybe even Cody Bellinger. Those were like maybe the 3 to 4 guys that everyone had their heart set on. In the end, we saw a total of 0 of those guys move, Joe. But because none of those moved, everyone thinks that this was a bad deadline for the Mariners. Do you disagree?
I disagree that it was a bad deadline. I think there was a move that was like live developing while we were chilling with 600 you amazing people, that it's like, okay, the Mariners in the final 3 for Yandy Diaz. That feels like the final piece that they could add that would be amazing to really like give this, like tie a bow on this deadline, give it an A. And then rumor got out that, okay, the Mariners are not the final. In the final 2, it was the Astros and the Yankees. And I think everyone largely will agree, or in the moment was agreeing that, okay, the Mariners don't get Yandy, not great. If this is where we're at, it's probably like a B to a B plus range. But if they let the Astros outbid them to get Yandy Diaz, this deadline immediately drops a full letter grade to like a C plus. And since he didn't move, I'm still sitting at like a B or a B plus. Should they have done one more thing? Could they have done one more thing? In like a theoretical world, yes. And of course, we'll never know how true Jerry DiPoto's comments are about like, oh yeah, we were talking with these teams, but just like nothing really ever developed. Like we kind of were done midday with the Chargois trade. Like how true of that really is? How much validity is there? He used the more smoke than fire quote. Again, he used it last year too. I'm not mad at this deadline. I understand that people are wanting one more bet. This team feels one bat away to really solidify themselves as a true contender. This team can be a contender once people get healthy, and I think that's the problem that people are having is like, okay, we're not healthy right now. Guys are continuing to get banged up, like Polanco leaving in the final game. That could be a problem going forward. The hard part is like, who was available that they could have gotten that actually did get traded that would have helped this team and made sense? It's probably Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, Ahmed Rosario, or Paul DeYoung. Players that can fill in for you at shortstop for right now, and then maybe go shift over to third base. Have some positional flexibility to be a utility player for you so you don't have to roster Leo Rivas. But of course, Rivas is gone once J.P. Crawford comes back, so it's like, how does that all figure it out? It doesn't really matter because you still have Jason Bossler, Cade Marlowe. Like, there's definitely expendable guys on this roster. I understand that, like, maybe they just were never interested in it for whatever reason, cost, player fit, whatever. Could they have done more? Yes. Am I mad that they didn't? Not necessarily, because you ended up with a top 2, top 3 bat move at this deadline. I'd say you got out like a bandit with the Jimmy Garcia trade with what you gave up for him, with what he's going to give you. Turner's a veteran presence that you needed. Chargois is a bullpen piece that, sure, it's not on the level of Garcia, but he's better than, like, I mean, he will be your 7th man out of your pen, probably. So, like, I'm not going to be mad at it when he's here. He's going to replace Jonathan Diaz, who ended up pitching in the final of the Red Sox game on Wednesday. If we had Chargois instead, would we have won that game? Like, I'm not going to sit here and play what-ifs with that. I'm happy with the deadline, ultimately.
Yeah, you said it specifically. I think that Ahmed Rosario, Paul DeYoung, or Isaiah Kiner-Falefa were the three guys that I'm like, you probably should have got one of those three. They didn't go for much, and they're guys that just made a lot of sense for you to go out and get. In terms of the relief help they got, I'm in love with what they did because you guys saw what certain players went for. I mean, the Tanner Scott and Brian Hoeing trade was crazy. Mm-hmm. The amount the Padres gave up for that. And if I'm the Mariners and I called the Marlins, which I guarantee they did about Tanner Scott, and then the Marlins said what they wanted, I mean, Jerry Dipoto should have hung up the phone and deleted the number. Like, it is ridiculous how much relievers went for in this market. And because of that, I think that when they went and got Jimmy Garcia, prior to everything happening, they didn't really have to. I mean, Jonathan Clase, whatever, fourth outfielder. And then Justin Slater, is that his name?
Jacob Sharp.
Jacob Sharp. Who's Justin Slater?
I have no idea.
Something. Austin Slater was traded at this deadline. Mm-hmm. I don't know. If you guys know Justin Slater, say what's up to him for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, cool. You gave up nothing for that. For JT Chargois, I don't even remember what they gave up for Chargois.
Will Schomburg.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
He's the Mariners' minor leaguer strikeout leader. But was he ever really going to be super, super valuable to this team?
Especially not this year.
Especially not this year. You get Chargois for another year after this one. So it's not just a rental purely like Jimmy Garcia is. The thing that I think people are hung up on is whether or not they could have forced a trade. They definitely have the prospect capital to do so. The talk about Yandy Diaz was that they were just wanting major league guys. And the Mariners' best bet there is like Tyler Locklear and Dom Canzone. And like that fit doesn't... It just doesn't fully... Like the puzzle pieces aren't fitting together for that one. You're putting the square through the round hole on that little whatever, right? That's just not how it's going to shape out. And so I get why they maybe didn't go that route. Could they have forced their hand? Sure. But then you're going to overpay massively.
I think that you guys, all of us in general, Mariners fans, we can't be mad about guys that didn't move. Like, again, like Luis Robert, Brent Rooker, or Vlad, because they didn't move. Clearly the asking price was either A, too high, or in the case of Vlad, the Blue Jays had zero intention of trading him, and they said as much. I said prior to the deadline, hey, go out there, you can force their hand, and you can. But it sounds like even forcing their hand wasn't going to work. You would have had to have given up even more than I had originally said, like 3 top 5s. Because they just were not going to give up a generational talent in Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Luis Robert, the White Sox had no interest in trading because he's been bad recently. And Brent Rooker especially was not going to be traded within the division. And so, could you have gone out and got Jazz Chisholm? Sure. I think that the Yankees way overpaid for him. And I think that the amount that they gave up for him, I mean, I think he's going to shine under the lights of Yankee Stadium. I really do. Would that have happened in Seattle? Who knows? But when you have Victor Robles, you have Julio coming back, like, you probably didn't need Jazz Chisholm. You could move him around the infield if you needed to. He's been playing a little bit of third base over there for the Yankees as well. So when you look at the bats the Mariners got, if you rank, like, the best bats available, it was probably Jorge Soler 1, maybe Jazz Chisholm. Nah, Jorge Soler 1. I'd say Randy 2.
Paredes?
I'd say Randy's a better hitter than Paredes. Paredes' numbers are so...
skewed because of the park,
because of Tampa Bay. I think once you get him out of a climate controlled park like Tampa Bay,
yeah, the wind blowing in Chicago is going to knock his home run ball down out to left field.
His 54 mile per hour home run ball that he hit is going to be knocked down. So I don't know. I think that I would put Randy as either a number 2 or number 3 on the best bats that were traded at this deadline. And then Justin Turner is a professional hitter who has a World Series ring, who we've already seen has paid dividends for this Mariners team. He's better than Tyler Locklear at first base. He's better than Ty France at first base, no matter what people are telling you. Justin Turner has been a great addition so far, even if Joe thinks he looks ugly in the uniform. So overall, I agree. I'd give this a B to a B+ of a deadline, especially compared to last year's deadline. And with that being said, they also kept their entire, other than Jonathan Clase, kept their... basically all of their top prospects. Like, if you consider Clase a top prospect, I don't. But if you do, then they kept 9 of the 10, right? And because of that, when you go into this offseason, you have the ammunition to go out there and add guys as well. Whether that be trying again for Vlad, whether that be trying again for Yandy, now that you're not in the heat of a playoff race. Because at the deadline, you're always going to overpay at the deadline. It's just how it works. Now that all these guys have another half season knocked off their contracts, you can go out there and spend the prospect capital that you need to go out there and get the prospects or the players you need, and you have more time to do it than just 3 hours on the final day of deadline day. Because going into the season, teams will probably decide early where they're at. The Rays probably, I would assume, trade Yandy.
In the offseason?
In the offseason.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a lot of players that could have moved at this deadline that likely could also, in the offseason, make sense going forward. You retain a lot of your prospect capital, basically all of it. You're adding a couple guys from the draft class that should jump straight into your top 10, with 2 of them closest, like at least close in there, and then a couple more that could round out in your top 30 somewhere. So there's definitely going to be moves made this offseason as far as trades are concerned. But as a deadline, the Mariners had one of the more successful ones around all of baseball. Like, if we looked at the Yankees deadline specifically, they get Jazz Chisholm and Mark Leiter, and who else?
I think that's it.
And they're in probably a larger buyer's market than the Mariners were, I would say. They definitely are in a dogfight for the division, just like the Mariners are, but they're the Yankees. They can just... They've done it for so long. I'm just like, we do what we want. We're the Yankees. Why not? And they didn't this deadline. I saw a lot of Yankees fans, like Dan Rourke and like Joe's McFly. I'm talking about like some John Boy media personalities, basically, being very frustrated at the Yankees organization. I understand that there's going to be frustration always with organization, how it's played out. But this deadline was a good one for the Mariners. Like, full stop. You got better. And that's what was important.
The Mariners did more than most every other team in baseball at the deadline. Now, part of that is because they had so many more holes to fill, right? But in terms of how much better they got, especially offensively, when you add Randy Arozarena, you add Justin Turner, like, how many teams went out there and added multiple guys that slot right into your, like, starting 9 that were buyers, right?
Does that say more about the current state of the Mariners lineup? Or?
Exactly. It says a lot about the current state of the Mariners lineup. But as soon as you get guys like Julio back, who hopefully will be back on Friday, ideally, JP is probably out until middle of August to maybe even beginning of September, which sucks. And Josh Rojas, has looked all right. Jorge Polanco's been playing great. Hopefully the knee is nothing to worry about. Like, the Mariners' offense is pretty solid right now. And obviously, could you have gone out there and added Vlad and made things even better? Absolutely. But let's say Victor Robles, everyone's healthy. Hopefully you're able to, at some point, put Luke Raley over there at first base if he starts to heat up a little bit, and give Justin Turner a few more days as a DH and less time to Mitch Garver. But that's when everyone starts to get healthy, so we're not there yet. Where we are now, Joe, though, is back home playing the Philadelphia Phillies on Friday, Game 1, against a team that I think is probably the favorite to make it to the World Series out of the National League. I mean, they've been a solid team. They have a really good core on that team. And they did quite a bit at the deadline as well, right? They added a few guys in the back end of that bullpen.
Austin Hayes they added. Carlos Estevez they added. They think they got Tanner Banks from the White Sox as well. There's probably someone that I'm missing in there that I can't remember off the top of my head. You're right that they are probably the NL favorite based around, like, if you look at records, but they've been scuffling the last little bit here. They're 3-7 in their last 10. They're still holding on to that division lead, but it is also encompassing of the fact that the Braves have been not as good as people expected. The Grimace Mets are, they're kind of closing in, but the Phillies gave themselves a big cushion to start this year. Friday night, it is going to be a very weird pitching matchup. Depending on if Brian Wu makes his start, we haven't really heard anything. Diaz pitched in the final game in Boston, so I have to assume Wu's making his start since we haven't heard that they're skipping it or doing something with it. And the Phillies were catching the rotation in a pretty solid turn because they've got some injuries.
Did Diaz throw like 2 pitches?
Yeah. But a pretty demoralizing 2 pitches.
That's true. It's a good point.
It was like a... I can't say it. Never mind.
Anyway.
The injuries to the Phillies pitching staff, Ranger Suarez is on the injured list. Taijuan Walker's on the injured list. Spencer Turnbull's on the injured list. It was what? Colby Allard?
Saturday.
Tyler Wilson?
That's something like that.
That's not his name.
Sounds good. Intermission.
Tyler Phillips,
yes.
Versus Brian Wu on Friday. Mariners are returning home. Hopefully. Looks like Julio hopefully back in the lineup. It seems like signs are pointing towards that. Robles is a big question mark whether or not he's going to be in the lineup because it felt like maybe it's just a day or 2 off. But the optimism around that. You'll know more probably by the time you're hearing this. Scott did talk about it on Wednesday, but that felt like maybe a couple of days situation where they're gonna dance around the IL like they did with Polanco earlier in the year. It'll be an interesting series to see how things shape up with specifically the pitching going forward, because the Phillies, like I said, we're dodging Aaron Nola. They're injured. Tyler Phillips, like, he's made, 4 starts? Mm-hmm. Something light like that. Sure, I think he said, a 1.8 ERA on the year, but it's a guy that's in limited action. Do the Mariners have an advantage with Bryan Woo? It's hard to say given his injury track record going forward right now. They're back home. They didn't do a great showing out of the deadline at home. Hopefully they kick off August on the right foot. But again, it is the Phillies. It's going to be a tough series.
Yeah, and the back end of their bullpen's as good as anybody's right now. I think they added a lot to their bullpen. And I think that because of that, the Mariners, especially with hopefully Gregory Santos isn't out, but you'll have Jimmy Garcia back. I mean, you have the off day, so everyone should be ready to go for this game if Bryan Woo isn't able to go deep in this game. We get to see Randy for the first time in the City Connects. We get to see Justin Turner in the City Connects. Again, hopefully Julio is back for that game. So overall, the vibe should be pretty high. We get to welcome a few new guys to the stadium as well. So I would assume it looks like anyway, that weekend's going to be packed.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be like near sellout levels for these games. Going into game 2, Joe, we're going to be at that game.
We will
for
be.
the Mariner Mojo meetup. So if you guys are there, we'll be in section 195 at the very top of the section. We'll also be at Hatback Bar and Grill a few hours prior to that, probably out in the box yard, just kind of hanging out with anybody that isn't able to get tickets near us because the sections are all sold out, or they just want to come say hello. So if you guys do happen to be going to that game, make sure you stop by and say hi. We'll tweet more out on Twitter as well as put some stuff in the community tab as well. We're going to be giving away some prizes to people. So if you do come up to us and you want a raffle ticket, we'll give you a raffle ticket. But anyways, Joe, going into game 2, Colby Allard here versus Bryce Miller.
Yeah, it is Colby Allard. It's just a weird name, I feel like, in 2024, starting a game for the Phillies in August. Like, sure. Is he anything? I don't know. I don't really know what he's doing. I was unaware that he was pitching in 2024.
I haven't heard about him since he came back from the injured list for like the Rangers last year,
Yeah,
I think.
so it's just like a weird situation of like, oh, that's a name. But you mentioned it's Bryce Miller opposite him. Talk about Bryce Miller's success at home versus his success on the road. Bryce Miller, it feels like he's leveled out a little bit. Be careful of him going into the 7th inning, but overall, I'm pretty comfortable, I'd say, with Bryce Miller on the mound at home. It is a situation where you're facing the Phillies, who have a top 10 offense in all of baseball. I think their WRC plus sits at 109 currently on the season. You know the guys that they're going to be. You have to look out for. Obviously, Bryce Harper. I don't know if it's his first time back in T-Mobile since he hit the home run off the windows, which feels like an eternity ago.
We were there, yeah.
We were there.
With the Nationals, yeah.
So I'm sure he's probably played in T-Mobile since then. Off the top of my dome, I have no idea, but maybe there's just a lot of offensive talent on that team. Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber. If something traumatic happens,
Nick Castellanos.
Yeah, like we'll play into the low-hanging fruit if we need to, but the situation that we usually run into with teams is that the Phillies have a great offense, and the teams that maybe aren't as good as the Phillies tend to have a bad offense and a good pitching, or good, bad pitching, good offense. The Phillies have both. Phillies are the 3rd best pitching staff in all of baseball by ERA. The Mariners are 1st, but when you're going up against a team that has a top 3 pitching staff and a top 10 at a minimum team offense, it's never going to be easy. This is a dogfight, and it's the right time for it because you just got better after the deadline. Hopefully your guys are getting healthier. You're still sitting there at the top of the American League West. Obviously, we don't know the outcome of the Astros game, but the final game against the Astros versus the Pirates, regardless, the Mariners will be tied in terms of standings. So you're heading into a very tough series at home nonetheless, tied at the top of the AL West. Bryce Miller at home on Saturday, just go out and throw a gem. You need it. I need it like I need air.
Yeah, he did. He threw nearly a perfect game against the Braves at home earlier this year. That was the Garver walk-off game, Garver walk-off home run that I really thought set him on the right track. But to wrap up this series on Sunday, you have the best pitching matchup of this series, and that is going to be Logan Gilbert versus Zach Wheeler. Wheeler's had a great year, ERA below 3. We know how good Logan has been. Hopefully a bounce-back start compared to how he looked in Boston. But nonetheless, I think that if you're the Mariners, this is a series, Joe, just don't get swept.
Yeah.
Just don't get swept, because The Mariners made their offense better. There's zero doubt about that. The offense is better today than it was a week ago. And when I look at this Mariners team, I think, okay, you talked about it. A team normally either has a bad offense, good pitching, or vice versa. The Mariners have great pitching. They had a bad offense. I think it's probably kind of coming into league average now, which isn't saying much. But in the end, sometimes that's what you need. You can't always be great on both sides of the ball like the Phillies are. And I think that the Phillies got a lot better as well. I was hoping to be able to dodge Carlos Estevez. Sounds like you'll probably see him in this series, which is very annoying. But nonetheless, I think that in a series versus the Philadelphia Phillies, as long as you don't get swept, I will be happy with it. Again, as long as some guys can continue to get healthy in Julio Rodriguez and hopefully Victor Robles and Jorge Polanco, along with Gregory Santos. The Mariners have a lot of balls up in the air right now that I think that we just don't know the outcome to at the time of recording this. So we'll kind of have to wait and see as we get closer to game time on Friday. That's going to do it from us here on episode 109 of the Hit It Here podcast presented by Bet Online, the JT Chargois episode of the podcast. And go Mariners.
No, it's fine, man. I didn't want to talk about like the best pitching matchup of the entire series, so it's cool.
Okay, cool.